Hey guys, it is September 2023 and you are looking at my cob nut tree. It's about time to harvest these things. They've mostly been falling off the tree. Here is one here. And if you're wondering what a cob nut is, it's a type of hazelnut. They're just different varieties, and I believe the reason these were so popular in Kent is because they're reliable croppers, easy to grow. I mean, these things, if you walk out in the countryside, you will see these trees pretty much everywhere. They are quite a lot of faff. It's quite difficult to hoover them up. You can't use like a fruit picker, a fruit roller to collect all the nuts. You have to pick them up by hand, and there isn't really a machine that can crack them. But the flavour is out of this world. I'm telling you, when you toast them, you've never tried anything like it. Forget any hazelnut stuff you've tried in the shops. This is unreal. So for me personally, it's worth it. Dead easy to grow, and of course you can get some canes out of the long branches that also grow prolifically. Anyway, let's give this thing a shake and get the rest of the nuts off. So you can see there it usually comes in 3 or 4 with the husks, and then you pop the nut out. Usually better to let these dry, and then you can easily pop the nut out. Now, the one thing about these sorts of nuts is that squirrels love them, and we've got a lot of grey squirrels in this country, but there must be quite a lot of foxes around here because they have not touched this tree. Very, very unusual. They also don't like it if you want to plant one, make sure it's quite a distance from a tree where they'll usually be living. So we've got a big sycamore there, but they might be living there, but they don't want to travel a long distance over the ground where they can get caught by cats and foxes. So that's one thing to think about. Anyway, I'm going to go around and collect all these up, and which I've started to do already. And then we're going to do the next step of the processing. Alright, so this is the grand sum total of all the nuts I collected. Didn't take me that long, about 10 to 15 minutes just to pick them up off the floor. And as you can see, they're all pretty loose. This one is still in the husk, but as you can see, it's pretty easy to pop out like that. Now, if this was earlier in the year, they would be much harder. And the reason you might want to pick them early is because if you do have a squirrel problem, the only way you're going to have any nuts at all is if you pick them early, slightly unripe. But that's not really an issue. They just won't be as perfect, but they will still be tasty. You can still store them and toast them, so on. So right at this time of year, it's absolutely perfect, end of August, and they've already relieved themselves from the husks. If you did want to pick them early, all you've got to do is put them on a windowsill, leave them out for a few days on a sunny day, or on a towel or something, somewhere where they can stay warm and dry and protected from pests, and the husks will dry out to the point where the nut will pop off. Anyway, let's measure the dry weight of these before we process them any further. So we're looking at about a little under 1.3 kilos. Next thing you need to do is soak them, and this will get rid of any floaters that may contain a weevil, or they may be rotten and things like that. So the next step is to soak them in water. This will clean them off a little bit, but also we're going to try and drown any weevils that are in there. Because these nuts float, unlike chestnuts which sink to the bottom, we don't know which ones are bad and which ones are good. You might be able to go through and pick out bad ones that are visibly bad, but we'll know once we crack the nuts open. But in any case, what we're going to do is just stick a plate on there and leave that for a few hours. So I emptied the water out of the hazelnuts. They've been sitting there overnight, and we're just going to dry them out now. So just going to spread them out over the bed on a towel. Just take out any husks and things, and then just let them air dry for a day or two in a spare bedroom or whatever, in the south facing room, or wherever you think you can get some decent airflow and some sunshine for a day or two till they dry out. Now there is another option apart from drying them out. You could actually freeze them at this stage whilst they're fresh. So just basically put them in a freeze bag and put them in the freezer. So we've had them drying out now for about 3 days, but you need to actually check them to see whether or not they are dry. And the way you're going to do that is obviously get a nutcracker and crack them open. Just try not to go mad because you'll break the nut inside. Okay, that one's got hardly anything in it. Okay, there we go. So you can see it's already shriveled up quite a little bit. So I'm just going to have a bite of that if it pings away. Now, what they say is, if you were a professional operation, you'd have all sorts of humidity sensors and temperature sensors, and you'd nail it 100% every time, or nearly every time. But we are doing this as rule of thumb, and what they say is if it's slightly spongy, which it still is a little bit, you still need to dry out a bit. And what you'll see is the colour, they'll be firm at first, then they'll dry out, they become a bit more spongy, and then as they completely dry they go rock hard, and the internal colour changes from white to a creamy colour starting at the outside, and when the colour reaches the centre of the kernel, as in like the whole thing is a sort of creamy colour, then you know the thing is dry. To be honest, looking at that closely, it's hard to tell with regards to colour, but what I can tell you is that it's definitely slightly spongy, so it's definitely got a lot more to go. I expect it to shrivel up a lot more, so we will dry those out for a few more days. We could even increase the drying procedure and put it into the dehydrator or the top of the greenhouse, where it's currently reaching a peak of 44 Celsius and has a bit of airflow. Probably is a good place to put them, as long as squirrels don't get them. Anyway, when this is done, we will revisit this and get them ready for storage. So in my opinion, the nuts are dry enough for storage now, and we're going to put them inside a container. Now, this is a typical modern bread bin, and it actually comes with a rubber seal to keep the bread fresh, so it actually seals on the lid. But what you're actually going to do is remove that rubber seal, because we don't want anything airtight, because any remaining moisture will actually cause the nuts to sweat in there and rot. So just to make sure, we're going to actually take that off. So any kind of, basically looking for a rodent-proof container that has got airflow in it, and then you're going to put it somewhere cool and dry, maybe under your stairs, or in a sort of dark cupboard somewhere. So all we're going to do now is just pour those in there, and that is that. Every now and again, go in there, just give them a turn, check that they aren't rotting. That's one thing you do have to keep an eye on, is when you're storing food, is to make sure it doesn't actually rot. So then put your lid on, and we'll pop that away under the stairs in my case. Okay, so we're going to toast these hazelnuts. So all you got to do is just crack them, each one with your nutcracker. I should say, get your favourite TV show on, have that going on in the background, because obviously it's a little bit tedious. Or get your friends round, have a couple of beers. But these are well worth it, trust me. The toasting makes all the difference. I'll just pop them on your baking tray. Okay, so I'll put the hazelnuts on the tray now. They've all been peeled, you can see that. And we're going to run that at 180 Celsius for 15-20 minutes and they'll be toasted. So these have been in the oven 20 minutes in the end, and they look lovely, and they've got a really satisfying crunch, really lovely toasted hazelnut flavour. I strongly recommend you do this. Now you could actually also blend these up and turn them into hazelnut butter, which is just like peanut butter, but far superior, really, really nice. You need a lot more than I've done here to be able to do that. So the remainder of these nuts I've put into the bread bin, and they're going to go under the stairs because that's an outside wall, unheated, so it'll remain nice and cool in there. But that doesn't mean to say you shouldn't go in and check them every now and again, and just run your hand through, give them a bit of a stir to aerate them a bit, and then just put them back again. You'll probably check on them every couple of weeks to see how they're doing. So I thought it might be useful to actually compare the different weights of the different nuts at different stages. So starting off with, so this obviously would have been air dried, but it's not been shelled and it's not been roasted. So we're looking at about 2 grams. That would be in its state of storage. Then we're going to look at a shelled nut that's not been toasted. So 0.78, and then we will put in a toasted nut of similar size, 0.73. So 0.05 grams of water has been lost in the roasting process, but essentially you're looking at about a third, aren't you? So you lose, so for whatever amount you weigh in terms of nuts, once they've been dried, of course, a bit, I'm not entirely sure what the weight of a fresh green nut is. I should have measured that before, but anyway, you'll end up with about a third of that in actual nut weight, to just give you a rough idea. Well, that is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've learned a bit about cob nuts and how to store them. I'll be making more videos like this on permaculture and sustainability, so please keep checking on the channel. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you liked it, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.